In the beginning, before time itself took shape, God, the eternal and sovereign, stood alone in majestic glory. With divine will, he chose to bring forth creation. First, he fashioned the heavens and the earth, setting the stage for all that exists. The grandeur of this act displayed his unmatched power and infinite creativity. As the pinnacle of his creation, humanity was formed in God's own image. God breathed into man the breath of life, bestowing upon him conscious awareness, free will, and the capacity for relationship. Humanity was created to enjoy close fellowship with the Creator, living in peace and harmony within the Garden of Eden. In that paradise, Adam and Eve walked with God daily, experiencing divine intimacy and innocence. But temptation lurked in the form of a cunning serpent, who whispered deceit into their hearts. The serpent promised that eating the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge would make them like God, knowing good and evil. Overcome by doubt and desire, Adam and Eve disobeyed God's command and ate the fruit. Their act of rebellion introduced sin into the world, severing the pure relationship between God and humankind. The innocence was lost, and with it, harmony and peace. God, in his justice and mercy, expelled Adam and Eve from the garden, placing cherubim and a flaming sword to guard the way back. Yet, even in this judgment, God's redemptive plan was woven into the very fabric of history. He promised that one day, a Savior would come to restore what was broken, to reconcile humanity to himself. Humanity's story quickly unfolds into a complex tapestry of faith, failure, and God's unwavering pursuit of his people. The early chapters of Genesis reveal a world marred by violence, greed, and moral decline. As human beings multiplied, their hearts often turned away from God's righteousness. The narrative highlights generations of descendants, including Cain, who murdered his brother Abel out of envy, and the lineage of Seth, from which a faithful remnant would emerge. Amidst widespread corruption, Noah stands as a beacon of righteousness. He is described as a man who walked faithfully with God. Seeing the evil that had overtaken the earth, God decided to bring judgment through a great flood. But in his mercy, God provided Noah with divine instructions to build an ark, a massive vessel designed to preserve life. Noah obeyed, faithfully constructing the ark over years, gathering animals of every kind, and preparing for the coming deluge. When the floodwaters burst forth from the heavens and the depths, the entire landscape was reshaped. Mountains were covered, and humanity's wickedness was swept away under the relentless torrents. For 40 days and nights, the ark floated on the waters, a vessel of salvation amid destruction. After the waters receded, Noah sent out a dove, which returned with an olive leaf, signaling that dry land was near. Finally, Noah and his family disembarked, offering sacrifices of gratitude to God. In response, God established a covenant, a promise never again to destroy the earth with a flood, and set the rainbow in the sky as a sign of his faithfulness. From Noah's descendants, nations arose, each with their own strengths and failings. The lineage of Ham, Shem, and Japheth spread across the earth, forming various peoples and cultures. Yet, humanity's tendency toward disobedience persisted. One notable incident involved Noah's son Ham, who, after planting a vineyard and drinking wine, became drunken and uncovered his father's nakedness. Ham's disrespect and lack of honor brought shame, and when Noah awoke, he pronounced a curse on Ham's lineage, particularly Canaan, marking the beginning of deep divisions among nations. Shortly after, the people of the earth, speaking a common language, decided to build a city and a tower reaching to the heavens. Their motivation was rooted in pride and the desire to make a name for themselves, neglecting God's command to spread and fill the earth. God saw their arrogance and confounded their language, causing confusion and scattering them across the planet. This event, called the Tower of Babel, marked the dispersal of humanity and the beginning of diverse languages and cultures. As generations passed, God chose a man named Abram, later called Abraham, to establish a special relationship with his people. Abraham was called to leave his homeland and journey into an unknown land, trusting in God's promises. God made a covenant with Abraham, promising to make him the father of many nations, to bless him, and to give his descendants the land of Canaan. Despite moments of doubt, Abraham's faith was credited to him as righteousness. Abraham's descendants grew into a great nation through his son Isaac and grandson Jacob. Isaac's wife Rebekah, after years of longing, miraculously bore twins, Esau and Jacob. God revealed to Rebekah that the older would serve the younger, a divine reversal of expectations. As the boys grew, Jacob, the quieter and more cunning one, tricked Esau out of his birthright and later deceived Isaac to receive his father's blessing meant for the firstborn. Jacob's life was marked by struggles and divine encounters. Fleeing from Esau's wrath, Jacob journeyed to his uncle Laban's house. On the way, he had a profound vision of a ladder reaching from earth to heaven, with angels ascending and descending. God reaffirmed his covenant with Jacob, promising that his descendants would be numerous and that he would be with him wherever he went. Jacob arrived in Haran and was warmly welcomed by his uncle Laban. To marry Rachel, Jacob agreed to work 7 years, but Laban deceived him by giving him Leah instead. Jacob then worked another 7 years for Rachel, demonstrating perseverance and love. His family grew, and God blessed his efforts, making his flocks plentiful. Yet, tension arose in his household, prompting Jacob to leave Laban and return to Canaan. On his journey back, Jacob faced his greatest test, meeting his brother Esau. Fearing retaliation, Jacob humbly sent gifts ahead and bowed 7 times before his brother. To his surprise, Esau ran to embrace him, forgiving and restoring their relationship. Jacob's name was then changed to Israel, meaning he struggles with God, symbolizing his transformation and new divine purpose. Jacob's 12 sons became the ancestors of the 12 tribes of Israel. Among them was Joseph, favored by Jacob, which stirred jealousy among his brothers. Joseph's dreams foretold that he would one day rule over his family, fueling their resentment. They plotted to kill him but ultimately sold him into slavery in Egypt, where he was bought by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. Despite unjust imprisonment, Joseph's faith and wisdom elevated him. He interpreted Pharaoh's dreams, which foretold 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. Impressed, Pharaoh made Joseph second in command of Egypt. During the famine, Joseph's brothers came to Egypt seeking food. Joseph tested their hearts, revealing his identity in a tearful reunion, and forgave them. The family settled in Egypt's fertile land of Goshen, fulfilling God's promise to preserve their lineage. Centuries later, a new pharaoh arose who did not remember Joseph's kindness. Fearing the growing population of Israelites, he enslaved them and decreed that all Hebrew male babies be killed at birth. Amid this oppression, a boy named Moses was born. His mother hid him in a basket by the Nile River. Pharaoh's daughter found him and adopted him, raising Moses in the palace, yet he retained awareness of his Hebrew roots. As an adult, Moses saw the suffering of his people and, in a moment of anger, killed an Egyptian oppressor. Fleeing into the wilderness, he married Jethro's daughter and became a shepherd. 40 years passed before God appeared to him in a burning bush on Mount Horeb. God revealed himself as I Am and commanded Moses to confront Pharaoh and lead the Israelites out of bondage. Moses obeyed, but Pharaoh's heart was hard. God unleashed 10 plagues upon Egypt, turning the Nile into blood, inflicting frogs, gnats, flies, disease, hail, locusts, darkness, and finally, the death of the firstborn. The Israelites were instructed to sacrifice a lamb and mark their doorposts with its blood so that the angel of death would pass over them. That night, the land mourned as every firstborn in Egypt perished. Pharaoh relented, and the Israelites departed Egypt in haste, led by Moses. The journey to freedom was arduous. God provided manna from heaven and water from rocks in the wilderness. Moses ascended Mount Sinai, where he received the 10 Commandments, divine laws engraved by God himself to guide his people in righteousness and obedience. These laws formed the foundation of the covenant between God and Israel. As they traveled, the Israelites faced numerous challenges. At the Red Sea, God parted the waters through Moses' faith, allowing the people to escape Pharaoh's army. Once safe, they journeyed into the desert, where their faith was tested repeatedly. In a place called Marah, bitter waters were made sweet by God's command. When food and water ran low, God miraculously provided, teaching that dependence on Him was essential. However, Moses' leadership faced a critical moment when he disobeyed God at Meribah. Instead of speaking to a rock to bring forth water, Moses struck it. As a consequence, God told Moses he would not enter the promised land. Moses' life drew to a close on Mount Nebo, overlooking the land promised to his descendants. God himself buried Moses in an unknown valley, honoring his faithfulness. Before his death, Moses appointed Joshua as his successor. Joshua was a brave and faithful leader who trusted in God's promises. As they crossed the Jordan River into Canaan, Joshua led the Israelites in battles to claim their inheritance. The most famous was the fall of Jericho, where the walls collapsed after the people obeyed God's instruction to march around the city and blow trumpets. The conquest of Canaan marked the fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham. Under Joshua's leadership, the tribes of Israel established their territory, becoming a nation bound by faith and obedience. Yet, even in victory, the people struggled with faithfulness. As generations grew, they entered a period called the time of the Judges. During this era, Israel repeatedly turned away from God, falling into idolatry, oppression, and despair. God raised up deliverers called judges, leaders who restored righteousness. One notable judge was Gideon, who, despite his initial doubts, trusted God's command to reduce his army and defeated the Midianites with only a small force, using clever tactics that relied on God's power. Another significant judge was Samson, endowed with extraordinary strength from birth. His life was marked by victories against Israel's enemies, but also by personal weaknesses. His love for Delilah led to his downfall when she betrayed him by cutting his hair. Blinded and imprisoned, Samson prayed to God one last time, and in a final act of faith, he brought down the Philistine temple, destroying many enemies and sacrificing himself. Deborah, a prophetess and judge, stood out as a leader and spiritual guide. She summoned Barak to fight the Canaanite general Sisera. With her counsel, Israel triumphed, and Sisera was slain by a woman named Jael, who drove a tent peg through his temple, fulfilling Deborah's prophecy. The final judge, Samuel, was also the first prophet of Israel's monarchy. His mother Hannah's fervent prayers had borne him a son dedicated to God. Samuel grew into a prophet who anointed Israel's first kings, Saul and later David, guiding the nation through transitional times. The people's desire for a king was driven by comparison with surrounding nations. Samuel warned that a king would impose burdens, but the people insisted. Saul was chosen as the first king, leading Israel to victories, but his disobedience to God's commands led to his rejection. God then directed Samuel to anoint young David, a humble shepherd with a heart after God. David's rise was marked by faith and courage. When Goliath, a giant Philistine, challenged the armies of Israel, young David volunteered. Armed only with a sling and faith, David struck Goliath in the forehead, defeating the giant and inspiring hope among the Israelites. This victory launched David's ascent to fame, but also drew the jealousy of King Saul, who sought to kill him. Despite Saul's relentless pursuit, David remained faithful to God. He formed a close friendship with Jonathan, Saul's son, marked by loyalty and mutual respect. When Saul died in battle, David was anointed king over Judah and later over all Israel. He established Jerusalem as the capital and brought the Ark of the Covenant to its center, symbolizing God's presence among his people. David's reign was marked by victories, expansion, and profound worship. Yet, his life also contained serious failures. His adulterous relationship with Bathsheba and the subsequent murder of her husband, Uriah, revealed his human weakness. The prophet Nathan confronted David, leading him to genuine repentance. God forgave David, but the consequences of his sin affected his family and reign. David's final days emphasized faithfulness and obedience. He appointed Solomon, his son, as his successor. Before dying, David urged Solomon to follow God's commandments and to be faithful, reminding him of the covenant and the importance of integrity. Solomon, David's son, inherited the throne and asked God for wisdom. God granted his request, making Solomon renowned for his discernment and understanding. His famous judgment, deciding who the true mother was in a dispute over a child, demonstrated divine wisdom. With wisdom, Solomon built the temple in Jerusalem, a magnificent structure that became the spiritual heart of Israel. It symbolized God's presence and the nation's devotion. Solomon's reign was also marked by international alliances, wealth, and prosperity, exemplified by the visit of the Queen of Sheba. However, Solomon's heart was divided. His many foreign wives led him to tolerate idol worship, turning away from exclusive devotion to God. As a result, God warned him of impending judgment. Solomon's later years saw internal strife, heavy burdens on the people, and the seeds of division. After Solomon's death, the kingdom split into two, Israel in the north and Judah in the south, due to disobedience and rebellion. The northern kingdom fell into idolatry and was eventually conquered by Assyria in 722 BC, leading to the scattering of Israel's people. The southern kingdom endured longer but fell to Babylon in 586.